You guys have to know at this point that I'm a massive fan of Power Rangers. It's literally right in your face in every single one of my videos. I've been watching the show literally since it started. Literally, the first time I remember being slighted by my father was when he taped over the premiere to the second season of the original show before I got the chance to watch it. And so I'm sure you can imagine that I got pretty excited about the recent Netflix special Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always, which, sort of anyway, reunited the original team of 6 for an all-new adventure. Now, sadly, reuniting the original team is not actually possible anymore. It's actually less possible now than it was when production on the special started, since the actors for Yellow Ranger Trini and Green Ranger Tommy have both since passed away. Both quite tragically, and I'm not over either one of them. But over the years, Power Rangers, a show which I have to stress was not built to last. This is not a show that they expected to go on like for a second season, let alone for, what is this, like 25 years or something now? It was not built to last, so it was not built to have deep lore. But it has recently become a show that has deep lore. I mentioned in my 2 cents on Power Rangers Dino Fury that they're really exploring the world of Power Rangers through what is the best writing of the entire show so far, and that only becomes more and more true as Dino Fury goes on, and the season previous to it, Beast Morphers, did the same thing. The reason why a fellow YouTuber, which is weird to say because he's way more popular than I am, but fellow YouTuber Linkara's History of Power Rangers series is arguably his most popular work, is because the fandom just loves trying to build a lore for this franchise. We always have, and so seeing the franchise actually begin to develop a deep lore has been so thrilling to us. But because this is a show that was never really built to last, and because not everyone is with us anymore, going back to the original and trying to revisit the original in order to build lore around it is extremely difficult. Because you also have the original Red and Black Rangers left with the original Yellow Ranger because their actors just, they weren't treated well by the show. And Blue Ranger turned technical advisor Billy left because his actor David Yost was gay and was being mistreated by the crew. There's baggage there. So bringing these people back is hard. And no show parts ways with all of its actors on 100% amicable terms. But this is the era of the show that fans want to see revisited. And it's been effectively impossible. In part because the show hasn't been able to acknowledge the fact that Trini can never be there again. So the Yellow Ranger must either be Trini in her suit the entire time, one of the other Yellow Rangers, or it has to be somebody new. And so one of the purposes of the Once and Always special was to bring in a legacy replacement for Trini, and to do it in a way that built the lore of the franchise and explored what these characters have been up to since their series ended. In the meantime, since their series ended. And absolutely shockingly, it managed to bring back Walter Emmanuel Jones, who played Zach in the first season, and David Yost, who played Billy. 2 people that we never expected to ever return to this franchise for any reason, even though their interactions with fans have been pretty positive. They just didn't really ever seem to want to return to the show. Understandably so. It's such a big deal. And if that were all that this was, if it was what it says on the tin, a reunion of a bunch of actors from early in the show's run, because we have Steve Cardenas back as Rocky, the second Red Ranger, and we have Catherine Sutherland back as Kat, the second Pink Ranger, and we have this new character, Min, who plays Trini's daughter, inheriting her role as the Yellow Mighty Morphin Ranger. If that's all this was just that. A short, cute little story about that, where the characters get to finally defeat the very first villain of the show, Rita Repulsa, who was never properly beaten by the Rangers. It still would have been a lot of fun if it had just been something that didn't bother to explain where these powers came from, because these powers have been gone for a while at this point, technically speaking. If it didn't bother to explain where their Zords came from again, for example, because those have been destroyed for a while too, and had just been an episode of the show, it still would have been a lot of fun, and I still would have enjoyed it. And in terms of the story, I'm just going to say, this is like a 7 out of 10 at its weakest. I think it's really solid. But this also goes whole hog with building a lore for the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Not only complementing what little tidbits of random lore we got back in the day that the fandom has since woven into a continuity, but building additional lore on top of it. We now know that the resources to restore the Rangers' powers and their Zords came from the fact that Billy is now a big tech guru guy with his own company. In fact, the new command center for the Power Rangers is beneath his company headquarters, in secret. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, to really illustrate how much this special cares about the wacky deep lore of this show. In the original series, for I think it was only for 2 episodes, and then we never saw it again, or something like that. There was a Volkswagen Beetle that Billy had modified. He called it the Rad Bug, and it could fly and stuff, and it was crazy. This special gives us a new Rad Bug. He has since built another Rad Bug, and it's the primary mode of transportation throughout this special. It's this one-off thing, but it stuck with fans. And the combination of fans and veterans working on this show, working on this special, they recognize that. They recognize that this is the thing that stuck with us, with the rest of us. And so they put it in there. They didn't need to, but they put it in there anyway, and it was spectacular. Additionally, there's other Legacy Ranger characters in this. Aisha and Adam, who are the second Yellow and the second Black Ranger, respectively, also return in this. They're mostly just characters on a computer screen as they're video chatting with the other characters. But based on their appearance, it's very heavily implied that they are on the ground level of establishing what will become SPD, one of the Power Rangers tech organizations, because Power Rangers comes from 2 different places, like magic and technology, and SPD is one of the tech-based ones. They're not exactly cops, they're an organization of superheroes, but they borrow a cop-like aesthetic and almost military-esque structure. But that was a series set in the future when it was released. And at this point, the franchise has gone on long enough that we should start to see that organization popping up in the background in new seasons of Power Rangers. And here, not only do they show us that that's actually happening, that they remembered that and they're acknowledging it, but Adam, being one of the characters who seems to be on the ground floor of getting this organization up and running, explains why this organization has teams of Power Rangers, because he's one of the characters who it's been established in previous episodes knows how to connect with the Morphin Grid, the source of all Power Rangers' powers, and restore broken powers. So it's a short leap to him establishing new powers for a new organization. In terms of the story itself, having the original villain of the show, Rita Repulsa, return in a way that is consistent with the way she was originally destroyed, which was very cool. And her being the one to... I'm just going to say it, YouTube. You can demonetize this video if you want. To kill Trini. It gave her death in universe a similar weight to the actress's loss in the real world, to the weight we feel at her loss in the real world. And having Zach take in her daughter and form this parental bond with her daughter, gave us the perfect avenue to explore how her daughter was feeling afterwards, wanting to get revenge on Rita for killing her mom. Fueled her entire story throughout this special. But because that's not a mindset that a ranger can thrive with, her mother's powers refused to bond to her until she learned what it really means to be a ranger. At which point she is saved from a blast by her mother's power morpher. And it's implied by her mother herself, because one of the fan theories that this special seems to confirm, based on some stuff that happened in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, is that a fallen ranger lives on through the Morphin grid. They become part of it and live on as part of it, helping other rangers if they so choose in the future. Because when the power morpher stops the blast that would have killed Min, she sees her mother's memories, implying that it was her mother who saved her. Rita's plot is even something that feels like it could have been lifted directly out of a lost episode of the early show, with her trying to build a time machine to go back and give future knowledge to her past self so that she can defeat the Rangers in the past and prevent her eventual defeat. But she needs a huge source of energy to power this machine. So she's capturing Rangers and plugging them into this machine, shrinking them down into Power Rangers action figures, let's not get ourselves here, and plugging them into this machine so that she can, through them, draw on the power of the Morphin grid to power this machine. It's not only consistent with Power Rangers lore, because tapping into the Morphin grid to power an evil machine is literally what the first villain of Dino Fury tried to do too. But it feels like the same kind of Saturday morning plot that Rita would have tried back in the original season, the original first season of the show. But what was super clever about this, about making this Rita's specific plot, is that it allowed them to write around whichever legacy actors they were able to actually get back for the show. Because, like, Amy Jo Johnson isn't returning as Kimberly, for example. Well, we have stock lines from her that we can use to voice her when she's a stunt actor in the suit. And then she can be captured by Rita and plugged into this machine. And now Kat's here, and she's the one that we see out of the suit for the rest of the special. But if Amy Jo had decided to return, then it could have been somebody else who was captured instead. And she would have been there instead of them bringing in Catherine Sutherland. The thing that might confuse somebody who knows the old show and hasn't watched the special yet, though, is the fact that when they bring in the replacements, they're still able to morph into their respective Power Rangers, while the other Rangers are still morphed and plugged into the machine. And it's the way they explain this, and the dialogue surrounding how they explain this, that got me more excited than probably anything else in this special, after I went back and really thought about its implications for the greater franchise. And I'm going to have to aside for a second to explain this. But there's a fan theory that's been very prevalent, and I have headcaned it myself for a long time, that the reason why different teams of Power Rangers will have Rangers of the same color but vastly different themes to their teams is because the Morphin grid cannot support two instances of the same exact power existing in two places at the same time for very long. This is based on the two White Rangers from Power Rangers Dino Thunder, a good White Ranger and the clone of him, the evil White Ranger, who, whenever they are morphed at the same time for very long, would both start to be harmed by these seeming power surges. The fandom went back and they connected this to a goofy one-off line from Zordon back in season 3 of the show, I want to say. I don't remember, don't quote me on that. Where Kimberly goes back to the past and gets help from Zordon of the past to give power coins to a bunch of the Rangers' ancestors so that they could morph and deal with a threat. But while she still has her pterodactyl power coin, Zordon has a second pterodactyl power coin that she could give to someone else. They could go into this battle with an extra pink ranger. But Zordon says they can't do that because
too much pink energy is dangerous.
It's a goofy line, but fans have taken that to mean, in combination with that on-screen stuff with the White Ranger, that was Zordon warning against having two instances of the same power active at the same time. These are obviously completely unconnected events. These things were never meant to link together at all, but the fandom linked them together to explain this stuff, to build a lore for this franchise, because we were the only ones doing it for such a long time. But this special, by referencing the danger of having two of the same power active at the same time, and linking it to that line of Zordons, confirms that fan theory.
Zordon was very clear. Duplicating active powers is very dangerous.
I don't care how dangerous too much pink energy is. Once a ranger,
always a ranger.
In a way that makes it clear that they were aware of the fan theory when they canonized it. This is a special that loves the fans, and I love it for that in return. I also have to say, it was great seeing everybody back. Billy, in retrospect, once I got older and really reflected on the show, became one of my absolute favorite characters. And seeing him return and just fall right back into spouting the technobabble and even kind of taking charge of the team in a few areas was extremely cool. And everybody looked great. They were great in their roles. A little stiff and out of practice here and there because this isn't their day job anymore, right? And they're older. So the physical aspects of it are going to be hard on them. Like, this is no slight to them. Obviously, it's just a fact of life, right? But they all felt like they belonged here. And it was great to see them again. Though I have to say, again, no slight to the others, but I feel like the OGs really came out of this looking the best. David Yost is still in fantastic shape for his age, but Walter Emmanuel Jones, in particular, he seemed like he had barely aged since he was on the show. It's absolutely incredible. Like, back in the day, Zach had this thing he was known for. It was absolutely silly, but he made it cool by being cool. He would combine dance with martial arts, because he was both a dancer and a martial artist. And they call back to that here in this episode, giving him a scene where he uses his hip-hop aikido to take down a group of putty patrollers, while the choreography serves to make it seem like an actual valid form of self-defense. It was so cool. They didn't need to do it. They didn't need to call back to that. But they did. And it kicked ass. If there was anything that I feel was kind of weak in this special, it's something that I actually feel was kind of weak about the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, way back in the day. And that's that when it came time for the giant robot fight, the CG could have been better. Because the Zords in Power Rangers, they're supposed to be giant robots made of super metals or whatever. Like fictional super metals. But they've never really looked metallic. They've looked shiny, because they're basically giant plastic action figures, but they've never really looked metallic. And as someone who has so much experience with this franchise, they look more realistic to me than when they don't look metallic. Even though technically parts of them, the unpainted parts of them, being metallic, it would probably be more realistic. But like Super Sentai for years has been using CG to supplement the guys in big costumes. And they understand this. The CG Zords, because they're not called Zords in the Sentai, you get what I mean, don't have any kind of substantial metallic sheen to them, even where it would make sense for them to have it. And they look more consistent because of that. But because it would have been too expensive to build an all-new Megazord suit for the giant robot fight at the end of this, and because they were planning to do some choreography that would have meant supplementing it with CG anyway, they just did the whole thing with CGI. And just like in that old Power Rangers movie, where the Zord looked really shiny and metallic, the Megazord in this looks really shiny and metallic. And it makes it look very unrealistic to me. And the same thing was true of the monster that it fought, because Rita, or Robo-Rita in this, resurrects 2 of her past monsters as robots, and so they had metal on them. Even though his metal parts never looked metallic, they looked more like they were like a matte gunmetal gray-esque color for the rest of the special. When he grew to giant size, his metal parts looked shiny and metallic. And it broke my suspension of disbelief a little bit. Like, the model otherwise for Megazord looked fantastic. And seeing it again was cool, and actually seeing the combination sequence from the original show again was fantastic. A huge wave of nostalgia. But it just looked off. And the choreography was really solid, too. The way that it defeats the monster by flipping over its head and then stabbing it in the back with the power sword was really neat. But it didn't look quite right. I feel like it could have looked better. Like, they could have taken another pass or 2 over the CG, and it just would have looked better. But that is a minor gripe. Otherwise, this is a fantastic special that exudes the spirit of the original show, and all but screams its love for the fandom. Like maybe they could have done more here or there to flesh stuff out better, but it was still a delight. I think my story rating is kind of fitting for the whole thing. It's about a 7 out of 10. It's really solid, substantially above average. Could have technically been better, but still an astonishingly satisfying watch. And the fact that at the end they dedicated it to those 2 fallen Rangers was just the perfect capstone on what would have already been a fantastic revisitation of this era of my youth that has somehow continued to this day, with the most recent season of Power Rangers being the strongest yet, and the next seeming like it's going to be even stronger. If you are a fan of Power Rangers, if you're someone who, even if you just watched the original show and dropped it when they switched over to Zeo, like I know a lot of kids from my generation did, you should watch this. I think you will get something out of it. And if you have kids in your life, like your kids, or if you have like nephews like I do, watch it with them. Like they use the K word in here, whereas Power Rangers usually doesn't do that. So you might have to like talk them through a couple of things. But I still think you'll have a hell of a time with this. It was so much fun. That said, Puss in Boots review still coming, I promise. I just wanted to get this out first because it's slightly more relevant at this point. But either way, what do you guys think of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always, if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else who you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.